Girl saved drunk billionaire. 5 years later they fall in love not knowing she has his triplets. Please don't leave me, Alexander whispered, his bloodshot eyes struggling to focus on the woman holding his hand. I can't remember your face, but I know you're my angel. Maya's heart shattered as she looked down at the billionaire who had no idea what they just shared in his hospital room. I have to go, she whispered back, knowing she was carrying his children and that he'd never remember this moment. 5 years later, those same hands would reach for hers again, but this time he'd have no memory of the night that changed everything. And Maya would have to decide whether to tell the man she was falling in love with that the 3 children calling him Mr. Alex were actually his own. What if I told you that saving someone's life could cost you everything you thought you knew about love? Have you ever made a split-second decision that changed your entire future? Tonight, Maya Chen made that choice, and it would haunt her for 5 years. But what she didn't know was that this billionaire would come back into her life in the most unexpected way possible. If you're ready for a story that will make you question everything you believe about fate, love, and second chances, then you need to hit that subscribe button right now because this tale will leave you speechless. And trust me, you won't see the ending coming. Maya Chen had always been invisible. At 24, she carried an extra 60 pounds that seemed to make her disappear in crowded rooms. Her nursing scrubs hung loose and unflattering, and her thick-rimmed glasses constantly slipped down her nose as she rushed between her double shifts at Murphy's Diner and her evening classes at Seattle Community College. Order up for table 6, called Jimmy, the grease-stained cook who'd been working the same grill for 15 years. Maya grabbed the plates, her lower back aching from the 12-hour shift that was nowhere near over. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the cracked vinyl booths where late-night customers nursed their coffee and picked at day-old pie. Here's your meatloaf special, she said to the trucker at table 6, forcing a smile despite her exhaustion. Thanks, sweetheart, he replied without looking up from his phone. Sweetheart. The word stung more than it should have. Maya had heard every variation of pity disguised as kindness. The gentle smiles from classmates who saw her struggling with textbooks while they partied. The way professors spoke slower to her, as if her weight somehow affected her intelligence. The dating apps where her messages went unanswered, her profile views dropping to 0 after they saw her full-body photos, but Maya had dreams that burned brighter than the shame. Every night, she studied pediatric nursing with a determination that surprised even her professors. She wanted to be the nurse who made scared children feel safe, who held their hands during procedures, who remembered their favorite cartoon characters and brought them stickers shaped like stars. Maya, you're cut for the night, Jimmy called out at 11:30. See you tomorrow. She untied her apron and grabbed her worn leather purse, the one her grandmother had given her before she passed. The October rain had started again, turning Seattle's streets into mirrors that reflected the neon signs of late-night establishments. Maya pulled her jacket tighter and began the 15-minute walk to her studio apartment. The sound hit her first. Metal against metal, the screech of tires fighting physics and losing. Then came the crash that seemed to shake the very foundations of the buildings around her. Maya's nursing instincts kicked in before her mind could process what she was seeing. A black Lamborghini had wrapped itself around a lamppost like expensive origami, steam rising from its crumpled hood. The driver's side was completely caved in, and through the spider-webbed windshield, she could see a man slumped over the steering wheel. Other pedestrians had already gathered, their phones out, recording the spectacle for their social media feeds. Oh my God, is that Alexander Blackwood? Someone whispered. The tech billionaire? No way. He's totally wasted. Look at all those empty bottles in the car. Maya pushed through the crowd, her heart pounding. Has anyone called 911? Yeah, but they said it'll be at least 10 minutes, a woman replied, still filming. 10 minutes. Maya looked at the man in the car and saw blood trickling down his forehead. His breathing was shallow, labored. 10 minutes might be too long. Sir, can you hear me? Maya called out, trying to find a way to reach him safely. The driver's door was completely jammed, but the passenger side had a gap just wide enough for her to squeeze through. Maya didn't think about her size, didn't worry about getting stuck. She thought only about the man who needed help. What are you doing? someone shouted. You could get hurt. Maya ignored them and carefully maneuvered through the twisted metal. The smell of alcohol was overwhelming, mixed with the acrid scent of airbag powder and gasoline. She reached the man and immediately checked his pulse. Weak but steady. Sir, my name is Maya. I'm a nursing student. Can you tell me your name? His eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. Where am I? You've been in an accident. I need you to stay very still, okay? Don't try to move your head. Alexander Blackwood, the man worth $2.8 billion, the tech genius who'd revolutionized social media platforms, looked at Maya with the confusion of a lost child. It hurts, he whispered. I know it does. Help is coming. I'm going to stay right here with you. Maya used her jacket to apply gentle pressure to the head wound, her hands steady despite the chaos around them. She'd practiced this scenario dozens of times in her clinical rotations, but never in a crumpled luxury car with a crowd of onlookers treating it like entertainment. What's your name? She asked, trying to keep him conscious. Alexander, he mumbled. I think. Everything's fuzzy. That's okay, Alexander. You're going to be fine. Just keep talking to me. The sirens grew louder, and Maya felt a wave of relief. But Alexander's grip on her hand tightened. Don't leave me, he said, his voice breaking. Please. Everyone always leaves. There was something in his tone that went beyond the physical pain, beyond the alcohol and confusion. It was the sound of a man who'd been abandoned so many times that even in his delirium, he expected it. I'm not going anywhere, Maya promised. The paramedics arrived with professional efficiency, carefully extracting both Maya and Alexander from the wreckage. As they loaded him onto the stretcher, Alexander's eyes found hers again. Angel, he whispered. My angel. Maya rode in the ambulance, holding his hand as the paramedics worked. She gave them his information, what little she knew from the news articles she'd read about the reclusive billionaire. 29 years old, no known family, CEO of Blackwood Technologies. At Seattle General Hospital, Maya stayed in the waiting room long after she should have gone home. She told herself it was because she wanted to make sure he was okay, that any decent person would do the same. But the truth was more complicated. Something about Alexander's vulnerability had touched a part of her heart she'd kept carefully guarded. Are you family? A nurse asked around 3 in the morning. No, I was the one who helped him at the accident scene. He's been asking for you. Keeps saying something about an angel. The doctor says he has a severe concussion and alcohol poisoning, but he's stable. Would you like to see him? Maya hesitated. She should go home, get some sleep before her morning classes. But the memory of his voice saying, "Don't leave me," made the decision for her. Alexander's hospital room was dimly lit, machines beeping softly around his bed. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable in a way that his newspaper photos never captured. The arrogant tech mogul was gone, replaced by a man who looked lost and afraid. You came back, he said when he saw her, his voice thick with medication and emotion. I told you I wouldn't leave. Maya sat in the chair beside his bed, and Alexander reached for her hand. His touch was warm, desperate. I can't remember things clearly, he admitted. But I remember your voice. You saved me. The paramedics saved you. I just stayed with you until they arrived. No, Alexander said, his eyes more focused now but still clouded with pain and medication. You saved me in a way that has nothing to do with the accident. The next few hours blurred together in a haze of whispered conversations and shared vulnerability. Alexander talked about his loneliness, about building an empire but having no one to share it with. Maya found herself opening up about her dreams, her struggles, the way the world seemed to look right through her. You're not invisible to me, Alexander said, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. You're the most real thing I've encountered in years. What happened next would haunt Maya for the rest of her life. In his delirium, his defenses completely down, Alexander pulled her closer. And Maya, who had never felt wanted or desired, who had spent years believing she was unworthy of love, didn't pull away. "Stay with me," he whispered against her ear. "Just for tonight. I don't want to be alone." The rational part of Maya's mind screamed warnings. He was intoxicated, confused, vulnerable. This was wrong on every level. But the lonely part of her heart, the part that had been starving for connection, made a different choice that in the quiet darkness of that hospital room, with Alexander's arms around her and his whispered words of gratitude and need, Maya experienced something she'd never thought possible. For one night, she wasn't invisible. For one night, she was someone's angel. When Alexander fell asleep, Maya carefully extracted herself from his embrace. She looked down at him, memorizing his face in the soft light from the hallway. Tomorrow, he would wake up with little memory of this night. The doctors had warned that severe concussions often cause temporary amnesia, especially when combined with alcohol poisoning. Maya wrote her phone number on a piece of paper and left it on his bedside table. Then she walked out of Seattle General Hospital and into the gray dawn, not knowing that she was carrying the most precious secret of her life. 3 weeks later, Maya stared at the pregnancy test in her tiny bathroom, her hands shaking. The plus sign was unmistakable, bold and life-changing. She took 2 more tests, then a 4th, hoping for a different result, but the truth was undeniable. She was pregnant. Maya's first instinct was to call the number she'd left for Alexander, to tell him what had happened. But when she searched for news about him online, she found articles about his recovery, his return to work, his complete lack of memory about the accident. Blackwood Technologies CEO Alexander Blackwood returned to his duties this week after a near-fatal car accident, read one article. Sources close to Blackwood report that he has no memory of the events leading up to the crash and is focusing on his recovery and his company's upcoming product launch. No memory. Maya stared at the words until they blurred. He didn't remember her, didn't remember their night together, didn't remember calling her his angel, but Maya remembered everything. And now she had to decide what to do with a secret that could change both their lives forever. She thought about calling him anyway, about showing up at his office and explaining what had happened. But what would she say? That she'd taken advantage of his vulnerable state? That she'd allowed intimacy to happen when he was barely conscious? That she was now pregnant with his child? The shame was overwhelming. Maya had spent her entire life being invisible, and now she was carrying the child of one of the most visible men in the world. A man who didn't even remember she existed. The decision, when it came, felt inevitable. Maya withdrew her savings, all $3,000 of it, and bought a bus ticket to Portland. She left Seattle in the middle of the night, leaving behind her nursing program, her job at the diner, and any chance of Alexander Blackwood ever finding her. But Maya had underestimated the gift growing inside her. At her first ultrasound in Portland, the technician's eyes widened. "Well, this is exciting," she said with a smile. "You're having triplets." Triplets. 3 babies. 3 lives that would depend entirely on her. Maya stared at the ultrasound screen, watching 3 tiny hearts beating in perfect rhythm, and made a promise that would define the next 5 years of her life. She would be enough for them. She would be their whole world, their protector, their everything. She would never let them feel invisible the way she had. The years that followed were a blur of sleepless nights, minimum-wage jobs, and online nursing classes completed during nap time. Maya moved into a tiny 2-bedroom apartment in Portland's cheapest neighborhood and transformed herself through sheer necessity. The weight fell off naturally as she chased 3 toddlers and survived on whatever food was left after feeding them. She traded her thick glasses for contacts, learned to style her hair from YouTube tutorials, and discovered that confidence could be built one small victory at a time. Emma was born first, with Alexander's dark hair and Maya's stubborn chin. She was the leader, the one who organized her brother's mischief and negotiated for extra bedtime stories. Ethan came second, quiet and thoughtful, with eyes that seemed to see everything. He was the artist, always drawing pictures of the family he imagined they might have someday. Eli was the baby by 3 minutes, but he made up for it with boundless energy and a smile that could charm anyone. He was the one who asked endless questions and believed in magic with the pure faith of childhood. Maya told them their father was a good man who couldn't be with them, but that he loved them very much. It wasn't entirely a lie. She believed that if Alexander knew about them, he would love them. But she also believed that telling him would destroy the life she'd built and the peace she'd found. By the time the triplets turned 4, Maya had completed her nursing degree online and landed a job at Portland Children's Hospital. She was no longer the invisible girl from Seattle. She was Maya Chen, pediatric nurse, single mother of 3, and a woman who had learned that strength could be found in the most unexpected places. But Maya had no idea that 300 miles away in Seattle, Alexander Blackwood was fighting his own battles with the ghosts of that night. The accident had changed him in ways that went far beyond his physical injuries. The near-death experience had forced him to confront the emptiness of his life, the way he'd used alcohol and worked to numb the loneliness that had plagued him since childhood. Alexander had gotten sober, not just from alcohol but from the toxic lifestyle that had nearly killed him. He'd started seeing a therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, who helped him understand that his reckless behavior was a cry for help from a man who'd never learned how to ask for what he needed. "Tell me about the dreams again," Dr. Martinez said during one of their sessions. Alexander shifted in his chair, uncomfortable with the vulnerability these conversations required. "It's always the same. There's a woman, but I can't see her face clearly. She's holding my hand, telling me everything will be okay. And I feel safe. Like for the first time in my life, someone actually cares whether I live or die." "And you think this woman was real?" "I know she was. The nurses at the hospital mentioned someone who stayed with me, who rode in the ambulance. But I can't remember anything concrete about her. Just the feeling of being cared for." Dr. Martinez made a note. "Have you considered trying to find her?" Alexander had considered it, obsessively. He'd hired private investigators, reviewed hospital security footage, even put out discreet inquiries through his media contacts. But the woman who'd saved him had vanished as completely as his memories of that night. "I've tried," he admitted. "But it's like she was a ghost. No one knows who she was or where she went." What Alexander didn't know was that his search had actually found Maya. The private investigator had tracked her to Portland within 6 months of the accident. But when he'd seen her with 3 young children, he'd assumed he had the wrong person. The woman in his report was described as a single mother, appears to have been pregnant at the time of the accident, unlikely to be the subject in question. Alexander had dismissed the lead without a second thought. The angel from his dreams couldn't possibly be a mother of 3. She was someone ethereal, untouchable, probably married to someone else by now. So both Maya and Alexander continued their separate lives, each carrying pieces of a puzzle they didn't know how to solve. Alexander threw himself into philanthropy, starting the Blackwood Foundation with a focus on addiction recovery and mental health services. He funded treatment centers, supported research, and became an unlikely advocate for second chances. "I want to help people who are where I was," he told the foundation's board of directors. "People who feel like they're drowning and don't know how to ask for help." The foundation grew rapidly, partnering with hospitals and treatment centers across the Pacific Northwest. Alexander was personally involved in every major decision, driven by a need to find meaning in his survival. Maya, meanwhile, had become one of Portland Children's Hospital's most beloved nurses. She had a gift for connecting with scared children and anxious parents, a gentleness that came from understanding what it felt like to be vulnerable and afraid. "Nurse Maya makes everything better," 6-year-old Tommy Rodriguez told his mother after Maya had helped him through a difficult procedure. "She has magic hands." Maya's colleagues often marveled at her intuition, the way she seemed to know exactly what each child needed. What they didn't realize was that Maya's empathy came from her own experience of feeling invisible and unwanted. She was determined that no child in her care would ever feel that way. The triplets thrived in Portland, attending a small elementary school where Maya volunteered whenever she could. They were bright, curious children who filled their small apartment with laughter and chaos. "Mommy, why don't we have a daddy like other kids?" Eli asked one evening as Maya tucked them into bed. It was a question she'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. Some families have mommies and daddies, Maya explained carefully. Some have just mommies or just daddies. Some have grandparents or aunts and uncles. What matters is that we love each other. But where is our daddy? Emma pressed, always the most persistent of the three. Maya's heart ached as she looked at her daughter, who had Alexander's determined expression and his way of tilting her head when she was thinking hard about something. Your daddy is a good man who lives far away, Maya said, sticking to the story she'd crafted years ago. He doesn't know about you, but if he did, he would love you very much. Will we ever meet him? Ethan asked quietly. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday. But Maya hoped that someday would never come. She'd built a life for herself and her children, a life where they were safe and loved and wanted. The thought of Alexander Blackwood disrupting that peace terrified her more than she cared to admit. What Maya didn't know was that fate was already setting the stage for their reunion. The Blackwood Foundation had been looking for new partners in their mission to support children's mental health services. Portland Children's Hospital, with its innovative pediatric psychology program and reputation for compassionate care, was exactly the kind of institution Alexander wanted to support. I think this could be a perfect partnership, Alexander told his foundation director, Jennifer Walsh, as they reviewed the hospital's proposal. Their approach to treating childhood trauma aligns perfectly with our mission. I'll set up a site visit, Jennifer replied. The hospital administrator mentioned they have some exceptional staff members we should meet, including a pediatric nurse who's apparently worked miracles with some of their most difficult cases. Alexander nodded absently, his attention already moving to the next item on his agenda. He had no way of knowing that the exceptional nurse Jennifer mentioned was the same woman who'd haunted his dreams for 5 years. The site visit was scheduled for the following month, and Maya received the news with mixed emotions. The Blackwood Foundation's support could mean significant improvements to the hospital's pediatric wing, better resources for the children she cared about so deeply, but the name Blackwood sent a chill down her spine that she couldn't quite explain. It was a common enough name, she told herself. It couldn't possibly be the same Alexander Blackwood who'd fathered her children, could it? Maya tried to push the thought away, but as the date of the foundation visit approached, her anxiety grew. She found herself studying news articles about Alexander Blackwood, looking for any mention of the car accident that had changed both their lives. What she found surprised her. The man in the recent photos looked nothing like the reckless playboy she remembered from 5 years ago. This Alexander Blackwood was sober, focused, dedicated to helping others. His eyes held a depth that hadn't been there before, a gravity that spoke of hard-won wisdom. You okay, Maya? Asked Dr. Patricia Williams, the head of pediatrics, as they prepared for the foundation visit. You seem nervous. I'm fine, Maya lied. Just want to make a good impression. Dr. Williams smiled. You'll be perfect. Mr. Blackwood specifically asked to meet with our most experienced pediatric nurses. Your work with trauma cases has been exceptional. Maya's stomach dropped. Alexander Blackwood wanted to meet with her specifically. After 5 years of hiding, of building a life where he couldn't find her, fate was about to bring them face to face, and Maya had no idea how she was going to survive it. The morning of the visit, Maya stood in front of her bathroom mirror, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at her. Gone was the overweight, invisible girl who'd saved a drunk billionaire from a car crash. In her place stood a confident, attractive woman who'd learned to carry herself with purpose and grace. Would Alexander recognize her? Maya honestly didn't know. She looked so different now, and his memories of that night were supposedly gone forever, but as she applied her lipstick with shaking hands, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that some connections transcend memory, that some bonds are written in the very fabric of the soul. In a few hours, she would find out if she was right, and if you think you know how this story ends, trust me, you have no idea what's coming next. Make sure you hit that like button if you're as invested in Maya's journey as I am, because the reunion you're about to witness will change everything you think you know about love, fate, and the power of second chances. Alexander Blackwood stepped out of his black Tesla at exactly 2 p.m., adjusting his charcoal suit jacket as he surveyed Portland Children's Hospital. The building was smaller than he'd expected, but there was something warm and welcoming about its design that immediately put him at ease. "Mr. Blackwood, welcome to Portland Children's Hospital," Dr. Patricia Williams greeted him at the entrance, her smile genuine and professional. "We're thrilled about the possibility of partnering with your foundation." "The pleasure is mine, Dr. Williams. Your hospital's reputation for innovative pediatric care is exactly what we're looking for." As they walked through the corridors, Alexander noticed the walls covered with children's artwork, the way the staff moved with purpose but never seemed rushed, the sound of laughter coming from the playrooms. This was a place where healing happened, where hope lived. "I'd like you to meet some of our exceptional staff members," Dr. Williams said as they approached the pediatric wing. "Starting with Maya Chen, one of our most gifted pediatric nurses." Alexander nodded politely, his mind already focused on the Foundation's goals and how this hospital could help achieve them. He had no reason to expect that his life was about to change forever. Maya heard them coming before she saw them. Dr. Williams' voice carried down the hallway, professional and warm, followed by a deeper voice that made her blood freeze in her veins. "She has an incredible gift with children who've experienced trauma," Dr. Williams was saying. "Her approach is both scientifically sound and deeply compassionate." Maya's hands trembled as she finished updating a patient chart. 5 years of preparation, 5 years of imagining this moment, and she still wasn't ready. She took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and turned around just as they entered the nurse's station. Time stopped. Alexander Blackwood stood 3 feet away from her, and Maya felt the world tilt on its axis. He looked older, more mature, with lines around his eyes that spoke of hard-won wisdom. His dark hair was shorter now, professionally styled, and he carried himself with a confidence that was entirely different from the broken man she'd held in that hospital room, but his eyes were the same. Dark brown, intense, searching. "Mr. Blackwood, I'd like you to meet Maya Chen," Dr. Williams said, oblivious to the electricity crackling between them. Alexander extended his hand, and Maya forced herself to take it. The moment their skin touched, she saw something flicker in his expression. Confusion. Recognition. Something deeper that he couldn't quite name. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice slightly hoarse. "It's a pleasure to meet you." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Blackwood," Maya managed, proud that her voice remained steady. Alexander didn't let go of her hand immediately. He studied her face with an intensity that made her feel exposed, as if he could see straight through to her soul. "Have we met before?" he asked, the question that Maya had been dreading. "I don't think so," she lied smoothly. "I would have remembered." But Alexander's grip on her hand tightened slightly. "I'm sorry, it's just, you seem familiar somehow." "Your voice, maybe." Dr. Williams laughed. "Maya has one of those faces. Very trustworthy. The children adore her." Alexander finally released her hand, but his eyes never left her face. "I'm sure they do." The tour continued, but Alexander found himself distracted. Every time Maya spoke, explaining a procedure or sharing a story about one of her patients, he felt that strange sense of recognition growing stronger. There was something about the way she moved, the gentle authority in her voice, the compassion that seemed to radiate from her very being. "This is our trauma recovery room," Maya explained as they entered a space designed to look more like a living room than a hospital room. "We use it for children who've experienced severe emotional or physical trauma. The familiar environment helps them feel safe while they heal." "It's remarkable," Alexander said, genuinely impressed. "How do you decide which children need this level of specialized care?" Maya's expression grew serious. "Usually, it's the ones who've lost their sense of safety in the world. Children who've been in accidents, who've lost parents, who've experienced violence. They need to remember that there are still people who will protect them, who won't abandon them when things get difficult." Something in her tone made Alexander look at her more closely. There was personal experience in those words, a depth of understanding that went beyond professional training. "You speak as if you know that feeling personally," he said quietly. Maya's breath caught. For a moment, she forgot about Dr. Williams standing beside them, forgot about the careful walls she'd built around her heart. "I think we all know what it feels like to be abandoned at some point in our lives," she said. The lucky ones learn that it's not permanent. Alexander felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that went deeper than memory. And the unlucky ones? They spend their lives expecting it to happen again. Their eyes met and held, and in that moment, Maya saw something that terrified her. Alexander was falling for her. Not remembering her, but falling for the woman she'd become. And despite every rational thought screaming at her to run, she was falling for him too. "We should continue the tour," Dr. Williams said, breaking the spell. The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of meetings and presentations, but Alexander's attention kept drifting back to Maya. When she wasn't in the room, he found himself asking about her. When she was present, he couldn't seem to focus on anything else. "Ms. Chen seems exceptional," he told Dr. Williams during a private moment. "How long has she been with the hospital?" "About 3 years now. She moved here from Seattle, I believe. Single mother, incredibly dedicated. Her children sometimes visit after school, and they're delightful. Triplets, actually." Alexander felt something cold settle in his stomach. Triplets? Yes, they're about 4 or 5 years old now. Adorable children. Maya's raised them entirely on her own, which makes her dedication to her work even more impressive. Triplets. 5 years old. From Seattle. Alexander's mind began racing, connecting dots he wasn't sure he wanted to connect. The timeline was right. The location was right. And that nagging sense of familiarity suddenly felt less like coincidence and more like fate, but it was impossible. The woman from his dreams, his angel, couldn't be a single mother of triplets. Could she? As the day wound down, Alexander found himself alone with Maya in the pediatric wing. The other staff members had gone home, and the hospital had settled into its evening rhythm. "Thank you for the tour today," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Your passion for your work is evident." "Thank you. The Foundation's support would mean everything to these children." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, both aware that something significant was happening between them but neither willing to name it. "Maya," Alexander said finally, "would you have dinner with me tonight? I'd like to discuss the Foundation's involvement further, and I feel like we have more to talk about." Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. This was dangerous territory, but she found herself nodding. "I'd like that. But I need to pick up my children first. My babysitter can only stay until 6. "Of course. Would you like me to come with you?" The question hung in the air between them, loaded with possibilities neither of them fully understood. "Yes," Maya heard herself say. "I'd like that." 20 minutes later, Alexander found himself standing outside Sunshine Elementary School, watching Maya interact with 3 of the most beautiful children he'd ever seen. They rushed toward her with the pure joy that only children could express, their faces lighting up as if she were the center of their universe. "Mommy," the little girl called out, throwing herself into Maya's arms. "We made art today. Did you?" "I can't wait to see it, Emma." Alexander's breath caught. The little girl had his eyes. Not just the color, but the shape, the way they crinkled slightly when she smiled. It was like looking at a photograph of himself as a child. "And who's this?" Emma asked, noticing Alexander for the first time. "This is Mr. Blackwood," Maya said, her voice carefully controlled. "He's visiting Mommy's hospital." The 2 boys approached more cautiously. The quiet one, whom Maya introduced as Ethan, studied Alexander with an intensity that was eerily familiar. The energetic one, Eli, bounced on his toes with barely contained excitement. "Are you really rich?" Eli asked with the blunt honesty of childhood. "Eli." Maya scolded, but Alexander laughed. "I suppose I am," he said, crouching down to Eli's level. "But being rich isn't the most important thing about a person. What's important is how you treat other people." "That's what Mommy always says," Ethan said quietly. "She says being kind is more important than being anything else." Alexander looked up at Maya, something shifting in his expression. "Your mother sounds very wise." As they walked to Maya's car, Alexander found himself studying the children with growing amazement. Emma had his stubborn chin and his way of tilting her head when she was thinking. Ethan had his quiet intensity and his artistic sensibilities. Eli had his energy and his infectious smile. The resemblance was undeniable. But more than that, Alexander felt an inexplicable connection to these children, a protective instinct that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than logic. "Mr. Alex," Emma said as they reached the car, "do you want to come see our apartment? Mommy makes really good spaghetti." Alexander looked at Maya, who seemed frozen between panic and resignation. "If your mother doesn't mind." "Please, Mommy," all three children chorused. Maya knew she should say no. Should make an excuse, should protect the secret she'd guarded for 5 years. But looking at Alexander with her children, seeing the way they were drawn to him and he to them, she found herself nodding. "Okay. But just for a little while." Maya's apartment was small but warm, filled with children's artwork and the comfortable chaos of a busy family. Alexander noticed the medical textbooks on the shelf, the nursing certificates on the wall, the photographs of Maya with the triplets at various ages. "You have a beautiful home," he said, meaning it. "It's not much, but it's ours." While Maya cooked dinner, Alexander found himself on the living room floor with the children, helping them with a puzzle. It felt natural, right, as if this was where he belonged. "Mr. Alex," Ethan said quietly, "you have the same eyes as me." Alexander's heart stopped. He looked at the little boy, really looked at him, and saw himself staring back. "Do I? Aha. And the same nose as Emma. And the same smile as Eli." From the kitchen, Maya dropped a spoon. The clatter seemed to echo through the apartment like a gunshot. "That's silly, Ethan," Emma said, but she was studying Alexander's face with new interest. "People can't have the same face unless they're family." "Maybe we are family," Eli said with the innocent logic of childhood. "Maybe Mr. Alex is our daddy." The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander looked toward the kitchen, where Maya stood frozen, her face pale with terror. The children looked between them, sensing the sudden tension but not understanding its source. "I think," Alexander said carefully, "that's something I need to discuss with your mother." After dinner, after the children had been tucked into bed with promises that Mr. Alex would visit again soon, Maya and Alexander sat on her small balcony, the weight of unspoken truths heavy between them. "They're mine, aren't they?" Alexander said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Maya closed her eyes, feeling the walls she'd built around her secret finally crumbling. "Yes. The night of the accident. You were there." "Yes. We were together. You were hurt, confused, vulnerable. You asked me not to leave you, and I couldn't. I should have, but I couldn't." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, processing the magnitude of what she was telling him. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you disappear?" Maya's voice broke as she answered. "Because you didn't remember. Because I was nobody, and you were Alexander Blackwood. Because I was terrified that you'd think I'd taken advantage of you, or that you'd try to take them away from me, or that you'd want nothing to do with any of us. So you decided for all of us. You decided I didn't deserve to know I had children." The pain in his voice cut through Maya like a knife. "I was 24 years old, pregnant with triplets, and completely alone. I made the best decision I could with the information I had." "And what information was that?" "That you were a billionaire playboy who'd nearly killed himself with alcohol and reckless behavior. That you had no memory of me or what we'd shared. That I was invisible to everyone who mattered, including you." Alexander stood up abruptly, pacing to the edge of the balcony. "You think I wouldn't have wanted them? You think I wouldn't have wanted to be their father?" "I think you would have done your duty," Maya said quietly. "I think you would have provided for them financially and maybe visited them occasionally. But I didn't want my children to grow up feeling like obligations." "They're not obligations, Maya. They're miracles. The raw emotion in his voice made Maya look up at him, and she saw tears in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what it's like to spend 5 years dreaming about someone you can't remember?" he continued. "To know that someone saved your life, not just physically but spiritually, and to have no way to thank them? To feel like a piece of your soul is missing and not know how to find it? Alexander, I've been looking for you for 5 years, Maya. I hired investigators, reviewed hospital records, put out inquiries. I never stopped looking for my angel." "I'm not an angel," Maya whispered. "I'm just a woman who made an impossible choice and has been living with the consequences ever since." Alexander sat back down, reaching for her hands. "You are an angel. You saved me that night in ways you'll never understand. And then you gave me 3 incredible children and raised them to be kind, intelligent, loving human beings. How is that not miraculous?" Maya felt tears streaming down her face. "I was so scared, Alexander. I'm still scared." "Of what?" "Of you taking them away from me. Of them loving you more than they love me. Of you deciding this is all too complicated and walking away. Of ruining the life I've built for us." Alexander cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs wiping away her tears. "Maya, I could never take them away from you. You're their mother, their whole world. And I could never walk away from them, or from you. You don't even know me anymore. I'm not the same person I was 5 years ago. Neither am I. But I know enough. I know you're compassionate and strong and dedicated. I know you put everyone else's needs before your own. I know you've raised 3 amazing children who adore you. And I know that being here with you and them feels more like home than anywhere I've ever been." Maya searched his eyes, looking for any sign of doubt or reservation. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to be part of this family, if you'll let me. I want to be the father Emma, Ethan, and Eli deserve. I want to be the man you deserve. I want to build something real with you, something that lasts." "Alexander, this is crazy. We barely know each other. We created 3 children together, Maya. We're connected in ways that go deeper than knowing someone's favorite color or their coffee order. We're connected by love, by family, by a bond that survived 5 years of separation and amnesia." Maya felt her carefully constructed walls finally crumbling completely. "I'm terrified," she admitted. "So am I. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been." Alexander leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. "Give us a chance, Maya. Give me a chance to prove that I'm not the man I was 5 years ago. Let me show you that some love stories are worth the risk." Maya closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 5 years of secrets and fear finally lifting from her shoulders. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." When Alexander kissed her, it felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at the same time. It felt like the beginning of something beautiful and terrifying and absolutely right. The next morning, Maya woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. She found Alexander making pancakes with the triplets, flour in his hair and a smile on his face that transformed his entire appearance. "Daddy's making funny shapes," Eli announced, pointing to a pancake that looked vaguely like a dinosaur. Maya's heart stopped. "Daddy?" Emma looked up from her seat at the table, syrup on her chin and happiness radiating from her small face. "Mr. Alex told us he's our daddy. Is that okay, Mommy?" Maya looked at Alexander, who was watching her with a mixture of hope and anxiety. "Is that okay with you?" he asked quietly. Maya thought about all the nights she'd tucked her children into bed, listening to their questions about their father. All the times she'd wondered if she'd made the right choice. All the fears and doubts and lonely moments that had defined the last 5 years, and then she looked at her children, who were glowing with happiness at finally having their daddy home, and at Alexander, who was looking at all of them like they were the most precious things in the world. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "That's more than okay." 6 months later, Alexander proposed to Maya not with a diamond ring, but with adoption papers that would legally make him the father he'd always been in his heart. The ceremony was small, held in the hospital chapel where they'd first met again, with Emma, Ethan, and Eli as their witnesses. "You saved me twice," Alexander told Maya as they exchanged vows. "Once from that car, and once from a life without knowing what real love feels like." "And you saved me from believing I was invisible," Maya replied. "You saw me when no one else could, and you loved me when I couldn't love myself." As they kissed to seal their marriage, their children cheered, and Maya realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the most unexpected circumstances. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the biggest challenges. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you save ends up saving you right back. The Blackwood Foundation's partnership with Portland Children's Hospital became one of the most successful philanthropic ventures in the Pacific Northwest, funding innovative programs and providing hope to thousands of families. But for Alexander and Maya, the real success was measured in bedtime stories and family dinners, in scraped knees kissed better and homework help, in the ordinary magic of a love that had survived impossible odds. And if you think this story couldn't get any more incredible, you're wrong. Because love like this doesn't just change two people, it changes everyone it touches. It creates ripples that spread far beyond what anyone could imagine. That if this story moved you, if it made you believe in second chances and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, then hit that share button and spread this message of hope. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that their story isn't over, that their greatest love might be waiting in the most unexpected place. And don't forget to subscribe, because stories like this remind us that miracles happen every day. We just have to be brave enough to believe in them. Sometimes the person you save ends up being the one who saves you. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the most impossible circumstances. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the family you never knew you needed finds you exactly when you need them most. This is Maya and Alexander's story, but it's also a reminder that your story is still being written. Your greatest chapter might be just around the corner, waiting for you to be brave enough to turn the page.